Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to the next presentation in this digital cave surveying series of presentations. We've been doing these since March when Bert presented on an overview of paper versus electronic sketch. In early April, Derek Bristol discussed digital sketching and paper sketching. In late April, I talked about preparation and data analysis. Tonight, we're going to hear from Beau Gergel on the paper to digital transition. Christian's presentation is going to be postponed in May. Hopefully, we'll schedule that for later. Might be in the fall when that happens again. In early June, we're going to hear from Dane on advanced TopoDroid tips and tricks. And then John's going to wrap things up June 19th on project planning and management. The first three presentations of this series are available on the Survey and Cartography section website here, along with quite a few other presentations that were done a few years ago. This is a great resource, this site, for understanding all aspects of cave survey. I think there's some GIS in there, a number of cave survey softwares. So I would encourage you to check that out. All right. Let me okay. So let's go back over here. And soon we're going to hear from Beau. I'm going to introduce him first. He's a member of the Greater Cincinnati Grotto, which is also my home grotto, and that's how I know Beau. Beau's been caving for quite a while. He's been a contributor to the Kentucky Speleological Survey for over 10 years, I believe, as well as Rockcastle Cave Conservancy. And in addition to those organizations, he serves the NSS in a variety of capacities over the years, especially through the Landowners Committee, which is something that he values highly. And one way that he shows his appreciation to landowners is to give them caving calendars specific to their caves, which is a really great gesture. So Beau has created many cave maps, some of which have been featured in NSS cartography salons at conventions. A couple years ago, along with Stephanie Suen, he designed and delivered an ongoing hands-on mapping course. Quite a few people have participated in that. It's been delivered in a number of locations. And that course has led to the nearly complete survey of a very popular recreational cave near Great Saltpeter Preserve in Mount Vernon, Kentucky. Beau is an authorized reseller of Write in the Rain paper, and runs a website where you can custom order sketching paper for your cave project. I think it's an excellent website and a great survey, a great service. And so if you need some custom survey pages for your project, then here's the place to get them. So Beau has extensive experience with very high quality paper sketching. He's even created his own cave survey symbols and presented those to larger groups. So we're going to hear from someone who's really experienced, creative, innovative, and knowledgeable about how he has now added digital sketching to his skill set and what that could mean for his cave maps. So, Beau?
All right, I'll get my screen on here. Oh, always allow. Hey, I'm blushing. That was a great introduction. Thank you. I really like what what you guys have been doing with this course. You guys have been posting it to YouTube, and I've been keeping up that way when I can't make them in person. But I do want to say, if you're joining this call, you know, it's live right now. Please ask questions in the chat or just chime in and interrupt me. Aaron will check the chat for me and chime in. And Aaron, please don't feel like you're interrupting. I'm going to pay close attention to time. It's a work night, and I reviewed and watched all the other presentations before this, and I don't know if Aaron planned it this way on purpose, but it's got a really good flow this entire series. So I highly recommend uh, watching the other ones before this. Bert and um, Bert and Derek did a good job doing the overview of everything and had really interesting points about like backsites and stuff and LRUDs that helped me a ton. And then Aaron even went into the nitty gritty of the actual app, which I think that will be next as well. So this thing's going to flow really well. And Aaron brought up a great point of how different ways to get this electronic data to the electronic map. So I'm gonna share my screen. Oh, I'm gonna share this presentation. Chrome tab. All right. Let me know if it's not showing. But this presentation today is if you watched the last 3 episodes of this series and you were like, yeah, I'm gonna go out there and I'm just gonna try it. That's pretty much what we did. We just went for it. And again, I've got some years of paper sketching under my belt, so I really just wanted to give it a go. And so we documented it, and this is that experience. So we learned some lessons if you go out there and try this for your first time. But I was pleasantly surprised by digital sketching and digital survey, and moving that to the final cave map, or just moving that towards the final cave map. So I'm really excited to share my epiphanies. But keep in mind, I too just tried this digital sketching. So with me was Stephanie Soon, Kyle Kreutz, and Maz. I always mess up his name. And as you can see in these first photos, this is when we got to the cave, and we just kind of threw all the devices on the ground and tried to figure out what the heck we were doing. And that's okay. We learned a ton. But that was, if I would just to do this again, we would be doing this under a shelter, or maybe closer to the cars where we had more shade. You can see how we were like hiding behind a tree to see the screens well enough, or better yet, a little bit inside the cave. So just some fun photos there, but that's just us breaking everything out. We all knew we had some bricks. We all had phones with TopoDroid already installed, or little tablets, and we went for it. So quick background, which Aaron covered already, but I've got 10 years of paper survey and cartography. I started in 2012 with the Western Kentucky University class, the survey class that Pat Cambyses holds. And I was caving before that, just sport caving. And then I learned about that class, and I was already in college at the time. And I took it, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. I was a little obsessive over it. So these are the photos from 2012 back then, and with the group of people that were in the class. So it was a great time, and I learned a lot. And I took that to actual caves. So the agenda for today is what prep work. Oh, you know what? I could probably get this to go live pointers. Oh. I'll figure it out. I know it's easy, but I don't remember all the time. I wanted to make like a little pointer, little laser pointer. But at the top there, prep work. So what stuff you have to do, or what you can consider to do before you go out to the cave. There's some things we should have considered too. I just want to touch very briefly on the traditional method of sketching with paper, and calling that the traditional method, the paper sketch, if you will. Our in-cave experience, the cartography process, we went through very briefly after the cave, just to see how this data exports. And then, next steps for our team that we considered, and then some final conclusions. So I guess consider during this presentation, if you haven't done digital yet, what is that first cave going to look like for you if you're getting interested in this digital stuff? And that's sort of the point of my presentation to share that. So before you try this, you should look at some resources. And what I did was I went to Derek Bristol's website, and he had some great videos on how to sketch with TopoDroid. Um, and that's really the background I had. After that, I had a couple experiences with some people. They came over and showed me how to do it, and then all just nearby Cincinnati. And then I got to experience a couple times in cave helping digital surveys in TopoDroid, and I failed pretty miserably at those because I really didn't know what I was doing in the practical sense. So I wanted preferably a safe space to do this with people that just haven't done it before, just throwing mud at the wall and giving it a go. So, but you have to have some sort of background. Like I knew how to take shots. I knew how that would show up on my computer or on my tablet. And I knew all of that because of Derek's website and a couple videos from that. And honestly, I think some of the next presentations will go over at least some of those details when they start diving into the menus, which is what Aaron did on the last presentation a little bit. Product, there's different tablets and stuff. Again, I weighed heavily on Derek Bristol. I just like realized he existed at the time, so I was getting a lot of information from that. I personally use a Galaxy Note that I got from a refurbished phone company. They asked me like what carrier on it that I wanted. I didn't really care because I wasn't putting cell service on it. But the Galaxy Note had the proper like pressure sensitivity versus like a static pen. I grabbed an old phone from the dead phone drawer and was using a little like energy pen from Amazon, but it doesn't draw perfectly. But the pressure sensitivity stuff or whatever special drawing thing that the drawing phones and tablets have, I think it's pressure sensitivity. Uh, that feels great. I felt right at home, sort of sketching on that. Now my sketches looked horrible, but it felt like I could get better at it. So consider having that product before you do this. I thought the Phoenix HM75R in the photo there is kind of cool. That little battery pack can charge your phone or tablet. So I don't think you're ever going to need that much charge, but maybe you do. And I thought it was cool that your batteries that you take for your light could also just charge your devices. So there's a lot of instructions on how to use it. There's like different types of discharges, one where it just keeps discharging and one where it like stops discharging. So that I thought that was neat. That was something I learned in this process. I didn't use fingerless gloves, but I would have considered them after that experience that I had in the cave. Um, and then home practice. You should practice by yourself. And I practiced in my basement. I didn't really care about any magnetic interference. I just wanted to make sure when I shot the stations, they took. I could imagine the idea of taking LRUDs, and just enough to where like I'm like, okay, just take like this will at least function in the cave. So I practiced in the house, and then this last piece of information isn't going to be very useful now, but when we all got together and started connecting multiple devices, the single bricks and distos, we didn't know how they were going to act. And we learned pretty quickly, you can connect the multiple devices to a brick or disto, but you can only download the data once. So when you click the download button, you grab that data, and then if somebody else clicks the download button, because we're like, what if we have two sketchers? Because we don't know how efficient it is at the beginning. Like, what if we have two sketchers? But that's really not going to work. Two devices. So that was a lesson learned, and that impacted how we separated into our teams because we had four of us, and the idea was everybody just get what you can out of this experience and ask questions. So the paper survey, in respect to the TopoDroid survey, even to this day, it's using a brick and a disto. The compass and tape is pretty phased out. I love the compass and tape. I loved when you would put it on the ground and you could like just leave it on the ground and you would know that you're like 20 feet from the station because you look on the ground and it's like there. Thought that was so cool. But right now, you're seeing electronic devices. Even though I love compass and tape, I'm not using it still. It's still a pain. So the paper survey still has a little digital in there these days. That's pretty widely accepted. And I know there's going to be situations where one might make sense of the over, but all the data needs to be recorded verbally. I didn't realize how big of a deal that was until I tried the digital survey. But you have to shout it all back and forth in the cave, and that does take time, and it introduces human error. But more importantly, I mean, I don't know, more importantly, but that using up time is a lot of time that I never really realized. All the data needs to be graphed point by point. I definitely realized I'm doing this when paper sketching, but I didn't realize how much of the survey I'm actually sitting there and graphing and recording data. It's like a significant amount of the sketch experience with the paper survey that you're doing these things. And again, I love paper survey, but objectively, these are the experiences I had. So the actual sketching can only begin after all the data is prepped in the paper survey. You sometimes got to wait for the backsites to come in case you have to erase them. You can get a little ballsy with it and keep sketching even though you don't have it confirmed, because it can be like fixed on the computer later. But you should be waiting till all that data is prepped to some extent. LRUDs, even in paper sketching, can be wrong in the sense that when somebody gives you a left, you don't really know unless you talk to them ahead of time if those lefts are perpendicular to your running stations, or if those lefts are just like, whatever they thought was the best looking left for you to sketch. So that's a consideration that I think a lot of people overlook, and in TopoDroid, you take a left and you know exactly where it is. So that was interesting. And then a highly detailed paper sketch is at least like 2 times slower than TopoDroid off of my short experience there. So TopoDroid seems to be at least twice as fast. But there's a lot of factors that go into that. But I just want to note that TopoDroid is faster. I think you can keep up with Paper Sketch too if it's an easy passage and you got a good team. I think you could, but I think that same person could sketch faster in digital. So we had to consider an ideal practice cave. So I'm not, here's the concepts on the side that you could consider. If you're going to go practice TopoDroid, do you want it to be a real survey or a fake survey? In our case, we weren't treating it as a real survey. We were just like, we're going to spend this day and just play with TopoDroid, because if it's not a real survey, we're not going to get too bogged down in the details if something's going wrong with the data. We're just going to keep moving on for the experience. So we chose, not a real survey. Will we go back, and survey it this way? Probably. But we definitely had some lessons to learn from this experience. Are you going to do it in a show cave? Is it a sacrificial cave? Are you wanting to experience water on your first time? Do you want to practice crawling in, mud and TopoDroid, or you want any of that awkwardness, or do you just want it to be large and easy? And do you need gloves? Because moving the screen around with gloves was doable, but I was like pressing extra hard and it wouldn't take every time. So I thought that was interesting. So we landed on a cave called Millipede Cave, which is a little scout cave that I don't remember if it has a map right now or not. I don't think it does. But I knew of this cave because it was one of the first caves I ever did. I'd never been back to it. And I was like, well, we can go see that cave again after a while and try to experience TopoDroid. And we also wanted to scout it out for a future survey class as a possible project cave to give to new surveyors to kind of like have them try their own project after the class. So couple extra little to-dos in our experience there. So again, it started with all of our devices on the ground like this. It was hard to see in the sunlight, and we were just trying to connect bricks and distos to TopoDroid. And it took a little bit of time. We probably sat around there for 20 minutes, especially as we were trying to figure out could 2 devices be connected to the same thing and not cause any issues. And then we were also talking about, okay, there's 4 of us. We'd like to try this with a 3-person team off the bat, but for all of us to like really try TopoDroid, we broke into 2 teams. So one team just kind of went in a station or 2 ahead of the other team, and we were right behind each other most of the time. So again, we started in groups of 2, and we said, okay, what's the most effective way to do a group of 2? And this is how it started. we had one of us be the tablet. So the tablet was shooting data and sketching, which I learned some lessons on that. But the tablet was in the back. Um, they were shooting all displays, shooting the station to the point. We were just doing double fronts to kind of get our feet wet here. And Bert and Derek from the last presentations and Aaron all had a really good idea of like you can take a back site, but you don't have to actually make it like a leg in your system. You can just take the back site and it be a sort of a grayed out piece of data that you can use to double check. So didn't think about that at the time, but I'll talk about that later. So the tablet was shooting the data and sketching, and then the point was just setting stations and taking cross sections. So, we're coming at this from like, can we make the digital survey experience any better by like implementing some lessons we learned from paper? So that was like, okay, let's have the point do cross sections. What will that look like? And the point in this sense, I said, was getting LRUD, so have them do the cross sections anyway, and that's going to be confusing to some TopoDroid users. But in the beginning, we were manually entering LRUDs because I wanted to try it without displays. I wanted just the left, just the right, and I just didn't want to sketch the line plot. But that's how it started. And then I wasn't doing cross sections because it seemed weird because it didn't automatically do it. So I was like, oh, the point will have paper and they can try cross sections. So this was how it started. Shooting the data and sketching was extremely time consuming to the point where I was like, I don't get it. I don't understand what's so fast about this. But again, it's because it was the way our team was laid out. Shooting like the legs and not even displays, and then graphing on it, was taking up more time than I was expecting for the electronic survey. So, but not worrying about cross sections was really nice. But the point was able to just get those, and we were just trying to see if we both were ready at the same time, and we kind of were. The point was still not doing as much work as the tablet in this case, but so that's how it started. In addition, how it started, the colors were terrifying. So I have the data there to the right, and I couldn't make sense of it. Nor do I don't even know how we ended up with so many colors. And you'll learn that there's different modes. There's a basic mode and advanced mode. And Derek talked a little bit about this, where you can filter out. You can take away some features of the program that could get confusing. And I was doing some stuff wrong as well. But I just want to note that how it started was this like lots of these colors and me not exactly knowing exactly what they all meant, like the teal, the orange, the gray, the white in this case. But we did get it figured out and we did get to a good system. I mentioned I was typing in LRUDs to begin. So if you click a station, you'll get this screen off to the right here. And it says plus LRUDs there, and it has M13 highlighted. So you can click plus LRUDs and you'll get this little 4-space drop down right there where it's pointing to the left, it's pointing to the right, it's pointing up, it's pointing down. And you can type them in that way. So when we started, the point was giving me LRUDs as me, the tablet, and I was typing them in. And on the sketch, it was just giving me a left and a right and no other, like nothing else, no other splays. And if I switched, it would only be the up and the down. And I thought that'd be like a superior way of doing it, but it really just ended up taking too much time as I started to appreciate the displays of TopoDroid. But it was worth a shot. So, however, what I was doing was I was mimicking the paper experience with the TopoDroid as much as I could. And it was helpful just starting out to not have all those displays on the screen. However, I wouldn't continue to do that after this experience personally, but it's good to know about if you're trying to transition easily into this. And I was also forcing a leg. So like you can like highlight station, so the green's highlighted there. That's sort of a different thing. You can click a station, so you can click M13 to M14 on the left photo in white, or you can click M14 to M15 in white on the photo to the right, and you can fill in like the actual station name, and it'll just force a leg right away. So it'll make it white and make it an actual station in your survey by like taking this M13 shot. I can't really point to it, but any of the blue M13 shots in the upper left photo, and then you could click that and just add M14 in the menu, and it'll just say that's M13 to M14. That's the actual shot. So like I was trying to like force a leg at first because I didn't want to try the triple shot for some reason, and it wasn't a good idea. But I wanted to try it because I'm stubborn. So I was forcing a leg to begin with, and I was typing in LRUDs manually, and I wasn't seeing like the real benefit of TopoDroid and its complete speediness. And I was also taking the shots with the device um, and sketching. So it felt weird at first. So overall, the groups of two is an upside down frowny face, or it's a frowny face, upside down smiley face, however I put that in. I didn't think the way we did groups of two was good. I think there's a good way to do groups of two. I don't think it's having a tablet and a point, and the point doing the stations and cross sections. I think the biggest issue is the tablet is shooting data and sketching, and that's a problem. At least learning. The manual LRUDs were like fine, that's okay, but that can be better. It wasn't perfect. I didn't. I'm not doing that anymore. And the manual stations, such as forcing a leg, like going back into the data, clicking an extra button to say this is M4 to M5, was wasting time too. And I put the photo in the right there because it just felt like we were we were just sticking our hands in ideas in places we shouldn't have been. So I was learning lots of life lessons in this experience, and it was good because I could put these ideas to rest. Although some of them might have merit in, the transition from paper to digital. So how it went, it started to go a lot better, really. We started learning different things. These are just some photos from in the cave. We weren't worried about sketch too much, like quality of sketch. But as you can see, I just used the red pen for everything. And I'm doing that also from the standpoint of like I know that I can fix it in the cartography stage. Like I know what my rocks look like. But this wouldn't necessarily be nice to somebody that was that wasn't that if I wasn't doing the cartography. But it was also practice. So I use the red pen for everything. The other team, they use symbols for everything. Now we did get significantly farther than them in the cave, but I don't know if it's because I was just doing the pen, like the single, no symbols or brushes or anything like that, just drawing it all with the pen. It also helped that it was like a pressure sensitivity device. So we were cruising at one point. So we started using triple shots with device rotations because we didn't have an idea for back shots at the time that was going to be efficient. And it wasn't a real survey too. But so we were triple shotting. So I do want to try to. Aaron, do you remember or know how to get the little laser pointer on Google?
I don't remember.
I did it.
Yeah, live pointers,
I thought it was that.
but it's not that. Show my pointer.
Well, I
Let's
guess.
check that.
Well, can you see my pointer now?
No, I see the mouse.
You do?
Yeah, I mean, I see your arrow.
Yeah. Okay, that'll work. It doesn't need to be red. So I can move my mouse around now. Is what I'm hearing. So triple shots. From M13 to M14, we took 3 shots. And you can see that because you see M13 to M14 in white. That was one of the shots. You see this gray shot underneath it and this other gray shot underneath that. Those are the 3 points I took. And then after the third point, it recognized that those were all the same and it established a leg, the M13 to M14. When it established the leg, it made it an actual station in the TopoDroid app. So that sped things up in and of itself. And we were rotating the device to try to give it, like, if you just take 3 shots with your device and you don't move it, I don't think that's as good as if you like pull your device off of the station and back onto it each time. So that's what we were making us feel better about not doing back sights. Now that I've listened to the other presentations, you can add a shot on here that's also gray, that is the back sight between M13 and M14, or below M13 and M14. And you can just use that to fact check yourself. So Aaron on the last presentation had, you take your leg, you take your LRUDs, you take your splays, and then you put the back shot in the end. And I think that's a great idea. Especially to have it all so organized. The back shot could probably go anywhere in that, wherever you want, but I thought that was a great idea when those were mentioned. So I wrote down there back sights needed, Derek and Bert, and now Aaron. I learned a lot from that. The blue data, the white data, and the gray data, very easy to read. The blue data is this splays. So from M14 at 4.53 feet, 221 degrees, minus 9.1 inclination, was one of the splays. There's a wall over there. And we took we started taking more splays. We weren't just manually typing in LRUDs. We've got what I called everything RUDs. So that was what I affectionately described them. You can see M16 there. It's got a ton of splays on it, and that helped shape the passage. Again, the sketch here, it has a lot to be desired, but first time. What was interesting is you just connecting the dots. I know other people have mentioned that, but yeah, for M16 to M17, it was a lot of connecting the dots. Now, I don't think I need that to sketch a passage super well, but it was helpful. I even took a shot to the floor ledge, and I thought, and because I was taking the data like that, I knew what it was, but that was interesting. So M16, we did a ton of splays. It was no problem. It was nice having all the data. Could see where the ledges were really easily. Could see that how the passage jutted out over there. But I was losing touch of my space in the cave, which was an interesting phenomenon. I was just like playing connect the dots versus when I just have 2 points to work off of, a left and a right on M16 and a left and a right on M17. I kind of ask myself, where am I in this cave or in this line? And like, where is this wall in relation to me? And I walk that line. I'm not saying I didn't do that with Topo Droid. It's just when I had all the data there, I was like asking, where is this wall, or where is this dot in relation to the cave? Not necessarily where I am in the cave. So it's a different way of experiencing it, really. And I think that's something you could break, but that might be a point to, paper sketch does help ground you within the cave if you just try that first. To Bert's point in an earlier presentation. However, I could see where you could get people digitally sketching super fast compared to some of the prep work you have to do for paper sketch. So I was thoroughly surprised and impressed, and I had a good experience. So overall, though, you have more data for the cave, and that's not a bad thing, I don't think. So we did start getting our flow. It was really cool to also see that if you, in advanced mode, if you like press and hold M15, it'll highlight M15 like that. Every shot you download when you're highlighted on a station like that, will think that next thing that it's downloading is coming from that station. So you have to be careful with that too. But it was cool because I could actually watch when I highlighted M16 and Stephanie was taking data to M17. I was like watching that graph real time. Like I saw it go in, and I saw splays get added to M16, and like that was just wild to me. Just being able to see the data come in, like basically while I'm sketching. So that was really neat. And the download button is where I wanted to go with this. On the top left corner here is the download button. And you can kind of use that to throttle more data coming to your device. So you can click the download button when you're ready for more data, even if they went and took the data before that. And it'll catch you up to where your survey team's at. And I just thought that was neat. So sometimes before I understood how everything was working, if she had the leg established, I was like wanting to make sure I was highlighted on M15 so that I was going to be downloading M15 to M16. But I realize now, after this experience, and Aaron's presentation mentioned it a little bit, uh, there's I don't know, rules that you can set to where if you just follow the certain procedure, you don't need to ever highlight any specific M14s, M15s, or stations. If you just follow that procedure, the whole thing's just going to work itself out. So, for example, establishing the leg and then doing splays, and the device will just know that your next leg that you established was after those splay stations. So that was pretty cool. And we started really moving once we realized those things. And then also how it went is we tried a team of three. So the team of three would be the tablet only, which was awesome. We had the instrument, which was the brick and the disto. And in that time, we still wanted to see if we could move those cross sections over. So that person could do cross sections. Now, that opens up another conversation about, like, okay, you have paper and digital data for your map and what you think about that. But, for the flow of the survey, the person taking those splay shots that has the data right in front of them doing the cross section isn't the worst idea ever if time permits. But, we would have to practice with this more. I do think that the tablet should just be drawing everything, and we just didn't want to overcomplicate that person experiencing that device, the topo droid on their first time. And then the point setting the stations, but they could also help with cross sections or do them instead of the instrument. There was an incredible understanding needed between the tablet and the instrument, which we learned pretty quickly. I was firing off some stations or some splays, and I wasn't always taking splays at walls. I took them at like some really good feature points, like a giant floor drop. I took a splay to, and that was super confusing for the tablet person because we didn't have like an understanding that I was only going to be taking splays to walls only. So there's a discussion to have before you start, after you get your feet wet, where the tablet and the instrument are in really tight alignment about, the type of splays you might be taking, that you're taking left, right, up, down strictly first, and then you're moving to other splays. Are you going to take splays at like pillars within the middle of the passage? Because if you are doing that, you're going to want the tablet person to know that you're going to be doing that, because they're going to see like this random wall in the middle of the passage, and they could be a little confused. So that was interesting. I still think you have to have that in a paper sketch when you have point giving you left and right at certain angles, but I think it's more important in the digital survey. So how it ended, LRUDs versus everything RUDs. I'm going to talk about that really quick. Groups of 2 or 3, which one's best? Where should you put the cross sections? How we lost data very quickly. The speed of the survey, and team operation. So how it ended in person. We did about 400 feet in 2 hours. That was like pretty dang good from never doing it before. I was thoroughly impressed by that. It was our first time using it in cave ever, like on our own. This is fast. I think 400 foot in 2 hours is pretty dang quick to have a profile and a plan and some cross sections, even though we didn't put them all, on the device on this one. How it ended, communication. We started asking questions that we don't ask on a paper survey. I was asking, did the leg establish? I was like, I took the 3 shots, did it take? So I was asking that question when I was taking data. I asked the person on the tablet, are you ready for splays? Now, I did this with, we did a couple different teams during this. I did this for one person and not another person. If you're on here, I apologize. But I said, are you ready for splays from a sketching standpoint? Are you ready for the next leg of data? Which, are you ready for that next station? Now, it is interesting. They can just not download the data until they're ready as well. But, you want to stay as a unit. Do you want to splay to that column is a really good question. We found out. As a sketcher with TopoDroid, I was saying I need more splays at X station, or please slow down. Whereas I didn't say that. I was told that, actually. So, communication changes in a TopoDroid survey. And after we got going, we didn't have to talk too much, honestly. TopoDroid knows how to establish a leg with the triple click. You can even, I learned since the last presentation, you can change that. Or triple click, I mean triple shot. TopoDroid assumes you are shooting from the last established leg or station by default. So once you establish a station, by default in TopoDroid, at least when I downloaded it, you could just go right into your splays and it would assume you're shooting your splays where you started to establish your leg from, or the end of it. But it worked out really well. You can highlight any station in green for TopoDroid to automatically think that's where the splays are being shot from. So if you need to go back in the advanced mode, at least, you can press and hold one of those stations, and then you can have your tablet or your instrument person take shots from that station, and TopoDroid will know to attach them to that station that you're highlighted on. So that was pretty cool. When we got going, it was cool. Before that, it was a little stressful. And then, how it ended, we came up with two solutions. Groups of two, you could do sort of a backside mode with point and tablet if you had to use groups of two. We only practiced this for a second, so this isn't full. It's not quite fleshed out yet, but in theory, backside mode on the digital device, the point records all stations and backsights, and then the tablet can just focus on sketching, but from like a front sight port standpoint. They could be there to hold their hand out, to take those shots. I think that would be, that was one setup we played with. You could try putting the tablet in the front, but that would be weird. Are there repercussions for doing this on established surveys from a data management standpoint? If you're just taking backsights, you might want to check with the person handling all the data for that project. And then groups of three were the best, which I was surprised by. I didn't think we would want groups of three need groups of three for the TopoDroid survey, but it was really helpful. Point mark stations, maybe does cross sections, maybe doesn't. Device collects the data, maybe does cross sections, maybe doesn't. Again, it was just our first time, and the tablet sketches. And I think that 3-person team is still fantastic. And I would prefer to do 3 people instead of 2 after that experience. So how it ended, we lost. So the other team that was doing Millipede Cave, just all the data disappeared. We don't really know what happened, but it happened. And we're like, we don't know what we're doing. So, but it did happen. So we probably did something wrong there, but we had we had my side of data. So I wanted to show our 2 sketches like side by side, 2 people that were that worked on this. But my sketches was the left side of this image to the right. And then Kyle's sketches were to the right. He was way more focused on a quality sketch. And I wish we could see it, but it's gone. and he was a little crushed, but it wasn't real anyway, right? But we went much faster on this left side of this image. We got 17 stations. They maybe got like 10 or 12, but theirs did look way more presentable. Fast but less detail was my set of sketches. It was a single pen weight for all the detail. Slow but more detail was Kyle's side of the sketches, and he tried the brushes and the symbols out, and it did look good. But that was just, an observation. So we did that test in Millipede, and I was like, all right, let's go to this local cave. It's very well known in the area, and the passage is just huge. Like, you could fit semi trucks in there, multiple of them in some parts. So I was really interested with TopoDroid not having to worry about scale so much, not have to worry about running off the paper. And I was super confident that we had this figured out. And so what we had Kyle on the bottom right there working the tablet. I was working the device, and Stephanie was further into the cave, taking as point, picking the stations. And again, super well traveled cave, tons of graffiti everywhere. We were just doing a little whiteout dots. And again, this was just practice, but we were in the other cave for maybe 3 hours total, 2 hours really sketching. So we had some extra time to try it fresh now that we knew what we were doing. It was kind of a failure from a teamwork standpoint, and I was really the problem. But teamwork really does make the dream work, whether it's a digital or a paper sketch. I had a thought that like the digital sketch could be like a one person job, but it really isn't. Not at all. I didn't have good communication with Kyle while he was working the tablet. Um, I was just like trying to see how fast we could go. And so I would take a leg and then I would just take as many splays as I can. And everywhere, I was taking them at walls, I was taking them at giant slopes, um, and and yeah, and you can see the scale down there. Two of those blocks is 50 feet, so it's pretty large passage that we were talking there. And again, don't judge the sketch. It's this isn't a real survey, but we were trying to see what we could accomplish. Um, so we were using everything RUDs on extremely large passage, so splays. I was causing lots of issues on what was a sidewall and what was a ceiling. And I just nonstop data collected, and I think it was a lot for the tablet at the time. So I didn't, I learned a lot there that you really have to work as a tight team, even with the digital survey. However, the amount of survey in this over probably like an hour of time was absolutely insane as far as just like getting data for the cave. The sketch, we probably need at least another hour or two in there to really get a proper sketch, though, especially with that size of the cave. But I wasn't allowing Kyle to do that by any means. So we had a train track walk at the end of it as we were walking back to the cars, and ultimately we came. We're all very well versed in paper communication, but although less communication I think is needed in digital, you're not shouting things back to each other and all that. The tablet and the device will still need to communicate prior to that survey starting. And I think in Derek's presentation, he mentioned that for a second, like how he would kind of coach somebody that was taking, I'm paraphrasing Derek, like coach somebody on how that you maybe want the data to be taken and make sure you guys are on the same page before you click go. The optimal team, I think, is 3 people. I think 2 people can work. You just got to be a little creative if you want to be as efficient as possible. Speed versus quality is the same issue in digital sketch that it is in paper sketch. If you go fast, it's going to look worse generally. If you go slower, it's going to work better. So think about the purpose of your cave map and the purpose of your situation. You might be more interested in speed, possibly if it's like if it's a camping trip and you're only going to be out there so long. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out there. The paper sketch, the biggest epiphany I had, and Kyle and all of us were talking about, was in the paper sketch, we're asking the question, where am I in this cave? Naturally, at least that's what we've experienced doing paper survey. In the digital sketch, it's where is this point or splay in the cave? And I thought that was super interesting to think about and reflect on after this experience. So I really do think it's important to at least try paper sketch a little bit, but digital sketch is quite accessible, and it is easy to get somebody started. So if you've only done digital sketch, it's worth trying paper sketch, just like it was worth me trying digital sketch. And honestly, I think I'm a little converted to digital after that one experience. I'm very impressed with it, and I'm excited to get better at it. So we processed the data over some beers. I wanted to also just see during this day what happened. What does it look like when we export it? So you could export it as a PDF. You could export it as an SVG. You could export just you can export the data. How I did it is I generally work through Compass and then into Adobe Illustrator. So I was just using what I know. So all my maps have been done that way. I know how Compass works. I know how Illustrator works. So we took the data and we did a Compass export to see what that data would look like in Compass. And I show that. I'm going to be showing that soon. I can't remember if this is an overview slide, honestly, or not. Okay. Yeah, this is like an overview slide. So you could do a PDF export, an SVG export. We couldn't get the Compass line plot to match the PDF export for some reason, and I'll explain. And then there's no scale on the exports I made. However, when I was watching Aaron Bird's presentation, one of his exports looks like it had the grid marks on it. So I have more to learn there. One of them has grid marks, and that was like 20 feet to the inch. Just I found that out. But like, why don't these just naturally export with scales? And somebody might correct me, but that was kind of weird. So the traditional process, Compass to Illustrator, that I was taught and that I use that is most accessible to me, and maybe you, maybe not, is you scan all the physical scans. You physically copy the data into Compass. So you look at every single scan and you say, all right, M1 to M2 was 25 feet, 125 degrees, minus 9.3, and then left, right, up, down. And you have to do that for every single station. You upload the Compass line plot into SVG Exporter, which is like a program to go to before you go to Illustrator. You copy and paste the line plot from SVG Exporter into Illustrator. You copy and paste scans into Illustrator. You place each individual scan on the line plot, and you begin tracing in Illustrator. So not to like confuse anybody that isn't familiar with it, but there's 7 steps. That's the way to think about this. 7 steps, and clearly a lot of them to start getting drafting on your map. And there is a program called Caveware that eliminates some of these steps. So if that sounds like a lot, Caveware makes it pretty freaking easy too, because it combines all your scans. So just some notes on the traditional experience. But the possible TopoDroid process that we experienced was just going TopoDroid straight to Illustrator, which we exported the Compass data, which was just the raw data. We exported the sketch from TopoDroid. We uploaded the sketch into Illustrator and we scaled it. And I'll explain how I scaled it, not knowing what I was doing. And then we began tracing in Illustrator the map. So, 4 steps, and you could even take away the first step, technically. So it was nice not having to retype all the data. You can use the traditional Compass line plot export through SVG Exporter to scale your TopoDroid scan. I scaled it in a different way, but that's a little extra right there. So this is what it looked like when I exported it. And when I exported it, I wrote, it asked me a question. I wrote the letter M, and it put like this M dash in front of everything. And, that's fine for these purposes, but, I guess I wasn't supposed to put that there. So ideally this just says M1, M2, M3, M4, and you can even see I got a little backwards during the actual sketch. But the raw data looks like this in Compass, and we didn't take left, right, up, down. I mean, we took left, right, up, down, but we also took a ton of splays. So my theory is that it just averaged like left, right, up, and down based on all displays when it spit this out. And I didn't want all displays showing as legs in the Compass file, because to me, if I'm backing up this data in the Compass file, I can put this data in Compass really quick, save it on my computer there. I like Compass, I get it, but I could also print this out and put it in like a printed file if I want to keep like a little, set of the data on a physical copy for some reason. It's just another location for data storage outside of TopoDroid, so it's easy to export your data into this. And yeah, the sketch export looked like this. This is the exported PDF, and it gave me grid lines when I did it. And I double checked it, but these grid lines are, 20 feet to the inch when I was working in, well, they're not, you still got to scale it, but that's the idea. The grid lines allow you to do some scaling, that's all, when I exported it as a PDF. After Derek's presentation in this series, I learned that you could export it as an SVG. And these all export as layers. So the walls, in theory, are already drawn, which I thought was super cool, because I don't really mind, like, when I'm using Illustrator, I've got my own symbols for watermarks, or I got my own brushes for watermarks. I have my own symbols for slopes. So I don't really care how I drew it in the cave too much. If I have my own symbols, like the rocks, I'm going to care about more in the cave. I want to know that there's mud there. But ultimately, the walls being already a vector, and I can just make the walls black by clicking their layer, I thought was really cool. and I didn't know it was going to do that for me. I did think it was weird. There's no grid lines. It'd be nice to have a scale that exports with, and I may have done it wrong, but coming from not knowing anything, when I just went to export it raw right into Illustrator, I didn't get a scale, and that was confusing because that kind of sets you up to do the rest of your map. This was interesting. Compass generates a 3D version of it, a PLT file. And so to the left is the PLT file it made by however it determined all of its LRUDs. So the left is, what the data looked like, and then the right is with the LRUDs doing the 3D passage. So that matched pretty well to the sketch, apart from some weird stuff that you always get. But overall, however it averaged those LRUDs, it wasn't too bad. There's some issues on M4 to M5 because I entered the data, I realized, but I thought that was interesting. This is what the profile view looked like, and it's running from right to left, just so you know on how I visualized it here. So just keep that in mind. And this is what the profile looked. Again, they're swapped. The exported version at the top is running left to right, and the bottom is running right to left. But if you invert them in your head there, they're not far off. And it did this by taking all those splays and giving them their own, LREDs. I thought that was just interesting. So in Illustrator, when I wanted to scale it, there was two ideas we had. One was the measure tool. There's a measure tool in Illustrator. And if you're using your document in inches, when you set it up like as a new document, you can just measure out 1 inch in your canvas and then drag this bigger or smaller until the grid line matches 1 inch. Like that was one way. There's probably a better way. Another thing that we did was we uploaded the scaled compass line plot through SVG exporter, which is the traditional way I do it. And then you'll have a separate M17 to M16, M15, M14 to just scale this to that comes in scaled. We could not get it to match though for some reason. And somebody might know why. When we went through Compass and we had Compass generate the line plot and we scaled it correctly in SVG exporter and made it a vector or whatever and got it into Illustrator, we could not get this exported image to match up perfectly with the data that was processed through Compass. And one theory was that Compass is like not going as many decimal points on every shot. And maybe that was it, but I don't know. I'd love to know if anyone else has run into that issue. I've only done this once, and it was directly after we experienced our little survey trip. But I wanted to share that. So the future. So if you go through this process, it was worthwhile just trying it and having a low stress environment. We definitely got our feet wet. The next step for us is to do an actual map on a cave with TopoDroid and complete that map with Illustrator post-processing, because that's what we're familiar with. I'd love to learn the Therion thing, but baby steps. I've invested a lot of time in Illustrator and I know it well enough to do that. So I'm just comfortable with it. So that's why I'm choosing that. Therion, I know, has other benefits on producing a cave map almost directly from the tablet. But final conclusions is if you're listening to this and you're interested in TopoDroid, what I did was I went to Derek Bristol's website, or I would watch these series, all of them once they're done, and then I would try it myself in my basement or with a friend. Think about your team layout and communication ahead of time and have a plan before you get to the cave. Know that this is extremely fast, and get a device with proper drawing ability, whether that's pressure sensitivity, whatever it is, it's a thing that was made for drawing on. I think it's pressure sensing, but I don't know for sure. The Galaxy Note series all have it. And what I did, again, was I just went to a refurbished cellular cell phone company and got a cheap one. They replaced the battery, and I just used that. And that is that right on the dot at 8:02. So, Aaron, I don't know if you wanted to say any words, or we just jump right into Q&A.
Well, what I want to say is thank you. It was a great presentation, and I love these presentations because I always learn something too. It's just the sharing of the information and our experiences. We're always doing things a little bit different. I think that's a great part about cave survey, caving in general, for that matter. There are a number of discussion points in the chat. It's been a really healthy chat,
Oh, geez.
which is good. So let's just start at the top, and we'll just work through a couple of these, and then as people are thinking about questions that they might want to ask. First one is the Phoenix lights. What is the right pronunciation of that? I always say Phoenix, but maybe I'm wrong.
I've always said Phoenix, but
Phoenix. That makes
I'm not
sense.
good with that stuff.
I've also heard Phoenix.
Phoenix. Okay, cool. All right, good. I learned something else tonight. Thank you. Um, the magnetics and the how close you can get one of those kinds of light to a survey device.
Uh, fair. What I like doing is I'll take my actual light, and I would do this with my analog instruments, like the ones that you look through, and I would just hold it to it, watching the dial, and you could start seeing the dial change. Uh, so you could kind of get a grasp for how close is too close. Alternatively, I think you can just turn a brick on, and it will like constantly be. Oh no, I might be wrong. If you turn a brick on, it's almost like it's constantly taking data in one version, and you might be able to like put it close to it there. But it also tells you an error, a magnetic error. So I always, if I get a new light, play with it. I'll take a shot without my light near it, and then I'll keep getting a little closer. And when I start seeing the errors, I know that that's too close. Uh,
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
my answer.
that sounds like the technique that I think we all use, and they're um yeah, and they're different. All the lights are different, and so that's you had the back sight slide in there. Bert and Derek both mentioned that, and I agree with them 100%. And it's that back sights are absolutely required so that you can determine if you have magnetic interference or if the battery is going down or something like that. Maybe for your cave project, it's not required for the data accuracy piece, but it definitely is there to make sure that again we're at least doing a sanity check on the shot, determine magnetic or battery. All right, one more comment here in the chat, and then open up the floor for questions. So you're using the red pen in TopoDroid, and some of us use the red and the kind of the tannish or yellow one, but there's no, and that's only like a visual thing.
Yeah, so I didn't. I just went with that because it was like the one that was highlighted. But after watching, I forgot to mention that. After watching what other people have done so far, having the red for just the walls and that tan or white for all the details inside of it is by far the way I would do this next time. Is that where that was going?
Yeah, that's where that's going, but and that's to tell the difference. But the main thing here, and this is another point too, but we'll come back to it, is that those two pen colors are what allow you to export everything via the SVG, versus if you're using the built-in symbols that are meant for um, they're meant for Therion. Like there's just no other, no two ways about it. That if you're using TopoDroid and you're using those symbols, you're using Therion. You're not using Illustrator. You're not using Inkscape. You're not using any of those. You're not using Compass. You're using Therion. And that's why those of us who don't use Therion very commonly are going to be using the pen colors like you've demonstrated and we've talked about in the other presentations. Okay, are there some verbal questions?
I guess I'll add to that comment. If you, the first time I sketched in TopoDroid, I did all walls like you did. And then the cartographer was using Therion to draw the map. And if you do that, it causes Therion to take 20 minutes to load like one page of sketch. So that's just something to be aware of. You can go the opposite way and like break Therion by using all walls.
That's a good point. I forgot about that one. Yeah, good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
That's good to know.
Okay.
Using the different colors of lines in TopoDroid also sort of solves the problem of a pressure sensitive tablet. You can use, when you want a thick line, you use one color. You want a thin line, you use another color.
I would also agree with Bert on that one. It's very easy once you like import it into Illustrator to like select just the walls and then make them thicker, and it gives you a
Yeah,
pretty
that makes total sense. I'm reading through the chat too right now, so Aaron, feel free to take control as much as you want.
Other questions, comments?
Oh yeah, I had another question, and I saw this surveying last week, and this is to anyone in the group that knows, and maybe you have an answer to this, but I noticed that some shots will be like highlighted red or like in different colors in TopoDroid. I have no idea what like I didn't really pay attention to it too hard. I'm not sure if that was a magnetic problem with the survey data. I don't know if you guys have any insight on coloring for particular shot legs in TopoDroid.
Someone probably has a better answer, but I just know white was the leg and blue was the splays.
Yeah, it's like the background color turns red.
Oh, okay.
And
My
you can
my
also-
recollection, Philip,
go ahead,
is
Bert.
that my recollection is that the red background does indicate some sort of magnetic anomaly, but it's all in the TopoDroid manual. It's pretty well covered by Marco in the manual he
Yeah, but
wrote.
when I'm like surveying super awesome cave, I don't want to just be like, hey, hold on, team, I'm gonna read the manual for 30 minutes, you know.
Well, and so you can set that. You can set what your acceptable difference is inside of it, just the same way that you can do in like a brick. You can set what your acceptable error, I guess, is.
Go survey some lava tubes, Philip. You'll learn to accept 10% difference between front sight and back sight.
I mean,
And
lava
lots
tubes
of
are
red.
cave, right?
I'm reading the comments still. I do want to note that the pressure sensitivity word, Philip, you mentioned this. It's not the right way to think of this. If you go and buy a pressure sensitive tablet or spend the money for that, TopoDroid doesn't recognize that. What I'm talking about is just your device is made for drawing. There's a
Yeah,
difference.
it's more accurate. Like you get more precision versus it kind of drives me nuts in TopoDroid that it supports finger painting mode. I personally think that should not be allowed. It destroys the pen like palm rejection, so you end up like drawing random lines on your sketch versus just only taking pen input. And most of the worst sketches I've seen in digital survey come from people finger painting. So that's my opinion on that.
I see the walk the line comment. Oh, by Aaron, I think, where you mentioned people even bringing tape to lay down on a digital sketch. At least learning. Thought that's interesting. I'm like hit me up on Facebook anytime. I obviously am not. I'm going through this experience like hopefully some of the listeners, and we were just able to get out and do it and record that experience. So I wanted to share that. I didn't think I'd be as happy or as impressed with TopoDroid as I was, but quite honestly, I've been reading the NSS news for many years now, and I see these footages that people get sometimes in this short amount of times, and I've always wondered like, what am I doing wrong? But honestly, I think it's just the difference with TopoDroid when you have a team that's doing it right. I'm not saying you can't do fast stuff with Paper Sketch with the right team. It's just it can be faster.
There, Yeah, there was a discussion about the scale when you export an SVG. And Bert commented about using Compass. There is a way of using Compass where you can put the scale onto the line plot, and then you can bring your sketch in on top of that. And that's using Compass. It's a really good technique. A really simple way to do it, if you're not using Compass, like let's say you're like me and you have to use walls because of certain cave
Yeah.
project, um, you just shoot a scale shot. You just make sure that it's a zero inclination or as close as possible. And you would shoot it at 20 feet or 50 feet or whatever you want your scale as, label it. And then when you plot it, it's going to look funny just sitting out there by itself, probably even outside of the cave wall. Um, but that becomes your scale. And then you just subtract it out later, from the distance, disconnect it. But it allows you to make sure everything's perfectly scaled.
Yeah, I just thought, I think, I think the guy who was like designing TopoDroid was on one of the first calls, maybe.
He's on this
And,
one too. It's Marco.
oh, is it hard to add the scale to the export? I wouldn't know. I'm sure it's a nightmare, but it would be a great feature. I think. I could be wrong. That's my 0.00002 cents.
Well, just add the grid to the export. The grid is your scale.
Yeah, that's fair too.
Hey, hello everyone.
Hey.
Hey, uh, I think you can add the scale. Another point is that Illustrator and Inkscape use a different scale, and there is a setting to set up the export for Illustrator instead of Inkscape.
I mean, that's a good point. I run everything through SVG exporter. It doesn't even go straight from Compass. It goes to this other thing, and then it goes to Illustrator.
And about the difference with the Compass and the PDF, you should consider that TopoDroid doesn't apply magnetic declination correction, compensation to the sketches. So the sketches are to the magnetic north, not to the true north. Your point about the number of digits, the decimal digits, might be also good. A reason for this discrepancy between compass plot and TopoDroid sketch, the plot in the TopoDroid sketch. Inside the TopoDroid, use a floating point number, so it does the sketch with all enough, let's say, not all, but at least enough digits, decimal digits. And when the export, the number representation is truncated to 2 or 3 digits. I don't remember exactly how many. So that might be a reason for the difference between the two
Yeah, and I
line plots.
don't know what Compass is doing. It rounds everything when you put it in sometimes too, and I always just assumed it was still plotting the data, even though it was rounding it visually. So I'm not saying it's a problem with TopoDroid. TopoDroid's probably more accurate, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Compass uses a fixed column width file, so there's only so many decimal points that it can put in there. And it also only uses feet to store all the data. So there may be it may be cutting off some of the data, and then like it is compounding over time comparatively to the sketch, if that makes sense. Like if your shot is shortened by 1/100th of a meter or like a centimeter every shot, and then you take
Right.
shots, that's like a whole meter difference at the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I saw a question Aaron Payne asked, when setting a leg in a cave survey, do you usually place the station on the wall face or on the ground? That's a good like intro question. I is that just cave station on the wall face or on the ground? That's kind of just like putting stations in the cave, and I'm really actually a terrible point person because I've always been sketching on the teams. I've been wanting to get better at, but when I place a station, I try to consider, the device I'm using, if it's going to have a good shot at both areas. If the station is in between, if it's in the middle of a major junction of different, areas, and getting the stations in the right place that way. But I mean, I don't know if that, I don't think that answers your question.
It
And
used to be if you were using a Brunton, you'd love to have it on the ground. If you're using a Suntos, you'd like it on the passage wall. And with the disto, it doesn't matter. Or a brick.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just where it's easiest to use the device.
I also had a question. You talked about the data loss, but you didn't really talk about how the data got lost.
So we went from one cave to the next cave. So you have your different, we had a couple test caves as we were trying to figure out how to start a survey. So we had like millipede test 1, millipede test 2, millipede test 3. Kyle had that, as he had like a couple files there. We were joking. We called them we were like Millie Bobby Brown cave, because we just kept saying millipede so much. But when we went to the next cave, I think it was when he was sketching that, he went in between the two files, and he went to pick up the other one and then go back to the other one cave to another cave of sketches, and it was just gone. It wasn't me, but I looked at his device too, and I was like, I can't find it. It's gone.
Like you know how it has the data, the line, it's all listed in a bunch of
Yeah,
files.
there's all those little things.
So it was just gone out of that line list.
That's what I need. I want to ask him if it was still there and all the data was gone, or if the actual thing was gone, the block.
Okay.
That's the question. But I'll let you know.
Yeah, because
It was awful.
Yeah, because if I lost us survey data in cave, because a lot of times when you're going caving somewhere, it's not like, okay, we're surveying from the entrance, so data loss isn't as big a deal versus okay, we have to go 4 hours into this cave and we flew halfway across the world to do this, and we only have a day to go survey this cool cave, and if you lose the data,
That'd be
it's
bad.
super duper bad.
But we were pushing buttons we probably shouldn't have been pushing. It did happen, and I've never heard of it happening before. I was surprised, but I'm interested in learning more of why it happened, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. But I'll let you know for the if it I'm going to ask him.
Okay, yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, and it's also helpful when you have those events, I'm sure Marco would appreciate it if you have total data loss, to figure out how to reproduce it or know how, because it benefits the whole community where people don't lose their data in the cave, so if you can figure out a situation that the whatever gets corrupted and it prevents it's the equivalent of your paper book catching on fire.
That's
You're if you hold your carbide lamp next to the paper book and it catches on fire, don't do that. And they're everyone else, oh yeah, that's a good point. It seems obvious, but in the digital world, it's a little bit more nebulous, right?
Yeah, and Marco and Philip, we'll check what version he was running to, and all that. That could have something to do with those.
About losing the data, TopoDroid never delete shots or whatever.
Maybe it's there, maybe it's hiding. We both looked, but
yeah, if you
maybe.
if you are in advanced mode or maybe tester mode, you can really delete a survey. There is an option to delete it. Otherwise, you don't.
I did
Data
put it in advanced mode when we started, but maybe it was as simple as that. So I'll check with Kyle.
Otherwise, data are always kept in the database, inside the program. I mean, yes, the program database. So
It's using SQLite, right, as the backend for the database.
is, yes, it uses SQLite.
Okay.
The database, it's in the TopoDroid folder. Actually, in the
Right.
the database for the survey. There is another database for the devices, which is in the private folder.
It is possible to like corrupt things with SQLite, but you have to like kill the journal file somehow.
Yeah, right. No, if you corrupt the file, probably you lose all the surveys
Right. Yeah.
because it's not just one set of data.
Right. For sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. So
I do appreciate everyone who I know I had a lot of questions myself during that, so I was able to read through all the responses too, and I appreciate everyone helping answer that. And just a big thank you on this work night.
Beau, and Aaron and Marco, I think what I've taken from Beau's presentation here tonight is that we really need some better training materials on TopoDroid. It's a lot of sort of feeling your way through and getting it to work, and realizing that there's features that you don't realize at first. I think the program is remarkably capable and has a lot of features, and we really need some better training material for TopoDroid. That's my big takeaway from tonight.
Get like some YouTubers. Is that like to
Well,
instructional videos?
there are a number of resources online, in addition to the documentation, which, by the way, we've made a GPT of it. I guess I should have shared that. I don't know if Marco knows that yet or not, but we've taken basically the user manual and ingested that and created an AI-based GPT. We'll share that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we can just take all the entire. I don't know if anybody's doing this, but it's a pretty common technique now for. It's called retrieval augmented generation with a large language model. You just take whatever documents you create an embeddings model. It's super easy to do nowadays. It gets easier every minute, essentially, to build these things. Um, Probably we'll have one of them for all of these presentations since we have the transcripts as well. But um, there's going to be, John just posted in the chat that there's going to be a hands-on class at the convention for digital survey. Um, John, would you mind expanding on that a little bit so people have information about if they want to attend it? I don't know if John's still on. Yeah, there's John on the call. Or do you have a link? Okay, you can email John. Yeah, put your whatever communication method you would like for people. If you can put that in the chat. And then there's a few references on YouTube. I'm going to share the screen here real quick and show some of these. Let's see. Let's go with screen one and share. Okay, so if you go into YouTube and you do a search for TopoDroid, you do get several hits. And I think if somebody spent some time, these are brand new. I don't know who Kaver Knapp is, but there are two videos from that person. And then here's Christian's presentation on quick look at TopoDroid to Therion. And again, TopoDroid, we're all using, or most of us on this call, and maybe even in the United States, are using TopoDroid, I would say maybe a little bit differently than it was intended, because TopoDroid and Therion are really the best combination to use together. If you want to be super fast and you want to have a map that comes out basically as soon as you walk out of the cave, than TopoDroid and Therion. I'm used walls and Illustrator like Beau, been mapping a long time, and we just have the ways that we work, and TopoDroid allows us to continue to work with that if we use the SVG export. But TopoDroid to Therion. Here's one of Derek's videos, TopoDroid data functions. That's not TopoDroid. Here's another Derek.
Yeah, the sketching and TopoDroid video is the one I watched, and that's when I started practicing in my basement. Like
Okay. Yep. Yeah, that's a good one. And then I don't know if this one might not be in English, but could, might have the ability to translate it. I think that one's in Italian. There's a few resources that are in Italian, I've noticed. Not surprising since, TopoDroid in Italy. But yeah, there's a number of resources here. And then what I'll wrap up this piece with is that at the convention this summer, I'm going to give a presentation on the resources that are available to learn how to do digital survey and sketch. And what it's going to be is essentially just a giant spreadsheet of all the stuff that's available. And I'll certainly make that easy for everyone to get to. I'll post it on Facebook and in the email chats and stuff. Send it to Bob for distribution to the survey and cartography section membership in the email list. And hopefully we'll be able to continue to share and promote. And then to your point, Bert, I agree. We always need more learning materials. But one of the things I like about what both you presented tonight is just your experience, and I learned a lot from that. So maybe we can encourage others to share their experiences, maybe in an open type forum or something like that, and that could enable us to more organically create some how-to material. So I will put this, let's see, if I put this link in the chat, then if I can figure out where it went. Oh, there's the chat. And at least that's that's one starting point to go get some reference material.
Thanks, Beau, and thanks, Aaron.
Thanks,
for all of
everyone.
this.
Thank you,
Beau.
Thank you for helping answer these questions I had too, everyone.
Awesome. Okay. If does anyone have any final questions or comments? Okay. Well, thanks everyone for attending, and Beau, thank you again for your excellent presentation.
Thanks, everyone. Sweet dreams tonight.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.